doing that did nothing, Eric. This guy was in line in 2 years to get a Todd Gurley type deal, to get $30+ million guaranteed. And now he's going to be fighting his way back into the league. It just feels like the NFL needs to do something, and they had the opportunity. They saw what went wrong with the Ray Rice situation, and they did nothing about it.
Yeah, from that standpoint, I got to agree with you. I wish your proposal for a 2-year ban, I think, is actually the best way to go. That way they just remove all doubt. They remove all, well, it's going to be 4 games, it's going to be 6, it's going to be exempt list, it's going to be this, that, or the other. You know, you have a guy like Reuben Foster who's employed, who has a history of problems. You have a guy like Ezekiel Elliott who fought a 6-game suspension for something he was never actually criminally charged with. And now you have a guy like Kareem Hunt who has video of him assaulting a woman, and he's put on the exempt list while they, quote unquote, investigate. I agree with you that the league just needs to take a standpoint that if it is proven that you have, whether through video or through police charges,
it's got to be proven. That's the thing. Zeke's wasn't proven.
Exactly. So Zeke Elliott should not be suspended for 2 years because it's never proven. He was never criminally charged.
Right.
And look, Kareem Hunt's not criminally charged either, but there's video evidence. So to me, that falls under, well, it's obviously proven that you did this, because whether you're charged criminally or not, it's proven that you laid hands on a female, and that's something as a league that we will not stand for. You have to draw the line in the sand, otherwise it's a slippery slope. Otherwise you get what we have in Washington with Reuben Foster. So Kareem Hunt, if they came out and said, as a league, hey, we've seen the video, boom, it's 2-year suspension, you're done for 2 years, and then at that point, the Chiefs have first rights to you, I have no problem with that. I think that's a good way to go. That way we get rid of this, well, is he suspended? Is he not? Is Ezekiel Elliott having to serve 6 games or not? But it's the same thing we've always talked about with Roger Goodell in the league, Justin, is that they just can't get out of their own way on some of this kind of stuff. You have a guy like Dante Stallworth who actually murdered someone and was charged with vehicular homicide and then played again in the league. They just don't have a path that's always consistent, and I think that's what drives fans and guys like us who talk sports. That's what drives us nuts.
I agree. And again, I take it back to the whole Brady situation. And look, I'm not a Patriots fan at all, but I think it's ridiculous that you suspend a guy for 4 games basically on principle because you feel he lied to you. So if that's the case, that's where I say when the NFL, they investigate these situations. It came out that they keep 2 basically law enforcement or ex-law enforcement, ex-FBI agent from every city on retainer. And when something like this happens, they go in and investigate this kind of stuff. If that person's in that hotel and they look up and go, okay, there's multiple cameras here, this is definitely going to be on video, this could come out. That's where I think you sit down with Kareem Hunt or whoever's involved and you say, look, there's going to be video. We do not want to look stupid because we've now had 2 different situations where we look awful. So you better be honest with us and tell us what is going on, because if you are, you're going to get a year suspension regardless. But if you come out that you lie and this comes out in the media and we once again have egg on our face and we look silly, you're gone for 2 years. That's where I think the penalty needs to be so that the NFL can get ahead of this stuff. This story would not have had this many eyeballs on it if simply back in February, the league had just come out and said that it would have been in the offseason. They could have handled it then and said, he's gone for a year. He was involved in an assault on a female, and we're just going to leave it at that. It would have eventually gone away as the season went. Now it's right in the middle of the season. The Chiefs are a favorite to get to the Super Bowl, and then you have the video that comes out. So it just feels like the league needs to figure out a way to handle this stuff better to get ahead of this type of stuff because it's not a good look for them. So we'll definitely continue to watch how this Kareem Hunt situation works itself out. If a team this year is willing to go ahead and bring him in, or if they're going to wait until the offseason. Is the NFL having anything to do with talking to these owners about not bringing him in just yet? We'll definitely follow that. But, Eric, let's take it on the field for Week 13 action. And this was one of those weeks, it happens several times a year, where you just get some results that seem to be unexplainable at this point. And we should have known it was going to be a wild week because last Thursday night, the Saints went into Dallas, and they looked awful. Looked like offensively they were inept. They only put up 10 points. Dallas wins 13-10. Eric, we've talked about the importance for a team like the Saints, a dome team, to hold on to that home field advantage, make a high-powered team like the Rams come in to New Orleans and have to play versus going out on the grass in L.A. So last Thursday night, did that game tell you more about how good the Dallas defense potentially could be, or did it sort of reaffirm the fact that on the road, the Saints are a different team than they are at home.
Oh, definitely a little of both. It was a very shocking game to me. I watched that game, and I obviously was hoping that the Dallas Cowboys were going to lose, being a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and they didn't. I mean, I counted on that game as an Eagles fan as one of those kind of ticks in the loss column that we needed for the Cowboys, and I watched that game with amazement because I say a little of both for the reason that the Cowboys defense did seem to rise to the occasion. They were at home. They knew the high-powered Saints were coming in. The Saints were averaging something ridiculous like 36 or 37 points a game. They hold them to 10 points. And not only that, Drew Brees, who's having a really, really good season, only threw for 127 yards with 1 touchdown, but also 1 interception. He just didn't look the same Drew Brees that he has all season long. You've got to attribute that to Dallas's defense and their effort on defense. The Saints, they showed a little bit of a crack there. Alvin Kamara, a guy who's normally a lightning rod out of the backfield, only rushed for 36 yards, and his counterpart, Ingram, only had 27. So it's clear that part of this answer has to be the Dallas defense. But I think you made an excellent point in the way that you brought this game up, which is the fact that we can't take a sample size of one game in today's NFL and make it mean anything, because it seems like every team goes out and lays an egg like this at some point during the season, sometimes once or twice, actually, for these big teams. You look at the Patriots, I mean, we use them as the gold standard just because they're a dynasty in my eyes. And again, I'm with you. I don't like the Patriots, but it would be wrong to not say that over the past 15 years, they're not a dynasty in the NFL. And so we look at them often as, well, what are they doing during the regular season? And they've lost a few games this year, one of them really bad. So it just seems like we can't, in a moment, take a one-game sample and make it mean anything. So I don't know what it told me about the Saints, really, because it just told me that the Cowboys saw a division lead and took it. They saw an opportunity to take control of the NFC East, and they rose to the occasion defensively. And the truth is, they themselves weren't very good offensively. It's not like Dak Prescott lit the world on fire. Yeah, he had more yardage thrown than Drew Brees, and his efficiency was unbelievable. A lot of those passes were short, but he only had 1 touchdown. It's not like he was amazing. Ezekiel Elliott was held under 100 yards. He actually only had 75. I just felt like this game was really a back and forth, no one could score thing. But the Dallas defense held their own and held a team that averages 37 points to 10. To me, it told me more about what Dallas was willing to do than really what the Saints are capable of.
I think for me, what I took away was just the questions about the Saints wide receiver group when they get in situations where there's just better coverage or the coverage is tighter. Can these guys get separation? And we saw Brees even struggle to hook up with Michael Thomas quite a bit. And those two have had a connection where over 90% of the passes Brees throws Thomas's way, he catches. And it seemed like he could get nothing going in this game, and Byron Jones was draped all over him. And even the touchdown pass that Brees had, it felt like there could have potentially been offensive pass interference called, as Kirkwood sort of felt like he pushed off a little bit to kind of get some separation there. So that was one of the concerns I had for the Saints anyways, of like, okay, Traquan Smith has these big games. He had a big game back on earlier in the season on Monday Night Football against Washington when Brees set the passing record. But since then, he had one really good game since that point. And when you start getting into the crunch time, when it's just not the first team to score 40 points wins, when you actually have to kind of grind out these games, move the football, continue to make first downs, try to keep possession of it, but it's low scoring. Is that something the Saints are going to be able to do because they're so heavily reliant on the 2 running backs and Michael Thomas? So that would be the concern I had with the Saints. And then, Eric, it kind of goes, it makes me laugh because, again, we talk about this a lot. We're on the road a lot. We listen to a lot of talk radio, a lot of sports talk. And you always hear when the Dallas Cowboys struggle, it always gets blamed on Jerry Jones. It's somehow Jerry Jones' fault. Then you go through a game like Thursday night, everybody's going crazy about the Dallas defense. Well, when you look at that defense, DeMarcus Lawrence, Van Der Esch, Jalen Brown, Byron Jones, those are all guys the Cowboys have drafted. It makes me laugh again at the hypocrisy of the media that they don't even realize some of the things that they say. They want to criticize everything Jerry Jones does And then they talk about all the talent that these team has brought in, and it's all been drafted talent. So if you're going to criticize the general manager in Jerry Jones for the moves that he makes, you have to at the same time, then if you're going to say that they have all this talent, how well they're playing, you have to give the guy some credit as well, because Dallas has spent a lot of assets and resources on this defense, and they are starting to play better. Even though Randy Gregory made some stupid penalties and felt like I think he must have had the Saints money line or something at that point of all the dumb penalties he got in the second half, when he's on the field, he's still effective. So that just kind of was one thing I took, that this defense, they're improving. They might even be better when Sean Lee is not on the field, when they're playing Van Der Esch more and Jalen Brown more. That combination seems to be working very well, and their secondary played very well. So I think you saw how good that Dallas defense can be. But the other takeaway I had from Dallas was there's a lot of talent on that defense, and it's a lot of drafted homegrown talent.
No, I think that's a fair point, and I think it's a valid point, especially as it relates to the purpose of this show and why we do this show and why we talk as two fans about the things that we see and we react to it, because I feel like you're right. I feel like the media likes to pick and choose their angle and set up their little debate shows and set up all of the things that they like to get clicks on, and sometimes it is hypocritical. Sometimes it's like, well, if you really dig into the facts, it doesn't make sense beyond just getting a reaction from the fans. So, yeah, I think you're 100% right on that. I mean, I hate the Dallas Cowboys as an Eagles fan, but I can't knock them for the defense that they've built. And if that's the reason that they're going to win tough football games like this one against the Saints and hold a high-powered Saints team to 10 points and end up with a victory, which significantly helps them in their division, you got to give credit where credit's due.
Well, the Dallas Cowboys are definitely on the upswing at this point. Let's talk about a team that's going the opposite way, and that's our old friends, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They always seem to give us content on this show, so we got to talk about them again. And they've brought the drama back. Last week, it was Ben Roethlisberger criticizing Antonio Brown. Seemingly, he didn't want to take responsibility for the late interception in Denver. It's his line blocked so well that the lineman was there, albeit there was another Broncos defender right behind him who would have probably picked off the pass as well. But it looked like in the first half, Eric, that the Steelers had righted the ship. They were putting it on a very good Chargers team, and then it all fell apart in the second half. They've now fallen back within basically one game or so of the Baltimore Ravens at this point. And you look at the Steelers' schedule upcoming, they still have games with the Saints and the Patriots, and James Conner will miss Week 14 at Oakland. So things not looking very good for the Steelers, but they seem, Eric, to love playing with this drama. So I know you watched the game on Sunday night. Is there cause for concern when it comes to the playoffs in January about what this team did and falling apart, losing that lead, especially in the fourth quarter? Or did the way they played in the first half sort of give you confidence that when they get to the playoffs, they can always turn it on?
They can turn it on, and if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, you have to love that aspect of their organization. They're a high-powered offense when they play well. But that defense and the way that they give up points in droves is a major concern. And when it comes time to playoff football, you just can't do that. I think this team is dead in the water. I think, like you just said, that the games that they've got coming up, I wouldn't be surprised if they split them or even lose both of them. If they lose both of them, they're in big trouble, because I'm not very high on the Ravens, but the Ravens just took care of the Falcons in this past week. The Falcons are dead in the water as well, but you have a team like the Ravens who now says, oh, well, we're not that far behind. The Bengals are no longer an issue. It's us and the Steelers. We can try to finish out the season strong and see what happens, because the Steelers may split or lose a couple of games coming up with these difficult matches that they've got. I don't know what to do or what to think if I'm in Pittsburgh. I just think that, like we talked about at the beginning of this year and a couple times throughout the season, this organization is in need of major changes. I think they're in need of a head coaching change. I think they're possibly in need of even moving some pieces around. As we talked about, I didn't think they should bring Le'Veon Bell back. I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they didn't give in to that. But Ben is getting to the point where retirement's starting to look a whole lot more attractive. If I'm Antonio Brown, or I know Smith-Schuster says he wants to stay in Pittsburgh for his whole career. That's great. But you're just starting to see these cracks become bigger than cracks. You're starting to see them become chasms when the going gets tough. You can't get a big lead like that in football games and then just give it away. They let the Chargers come back and win that game. So it was a close game. It was a good contest. But at the end of the day, you take the L, and that's a big deal for your season. I don't know, Justin. I think this team probably is a non-factor when it comes to the playoffs. I just think that right now, I know that the Patriots will rise to the occasion, and I believe the Texans are playing well enough, and I don't know what the Chiefs are going to do, but it's probably a non-factor now because it looks like the Chargers are going to take one of those